Hello everyone, welcome to the third SelfCAD webinar called Hard Surface Modeling. My name is Chrapkiewicz. I hope you are doing well both physically and mentally in those hard days. We are lucky to actually be able to still work, so a big shout out to those who are really struggling. This webinar will be actually split into two parts. The first part will be to cover basics like how to start the project, how to manage the workspace, set up your preferences so it's easier for you to customize your workspace so you are much more comfortable with the scene in general. We are going to cover some basic tools in the first part, and then we are going to use the models that we generate in that part for the next part, which will cover things like more advanced tools, but also some environment setups and hopefully also some animations and lighting. We are going to try to generate something like this, as you can see, and I already figured out some improvements. Like for example, I'm using for the windows here some textures, and we are going to use environment maps here later on to get a better reflectiness effect in the end. Okay, without any further ado, let's actually start from beginning. So we are going to close the project, and we are going to the website, and once you log in here, you can actually press the launch editor button, and this will redirect you to the editor, and you can start modeling from there. Once you enter, if you are a new user, you won't see any projects. So the thing that you need to do is press on the plus button here to actually start a new project. You will see a couple of settings here on this new project settings page. I suggest to name your project so you actually know later what exactly is inside of it. So I will just call it hard surface for now, and I will explain those settings here a little. Today we are going to focus quite a lot on segment size, which is by default set to 50, and we are going to virtually set a unit based on this setting. This might sound a little confusing for new users, but we will use it over the entire webinar project, so I want to explain it right now. So what we are going to use as a unit today is actually 100, which is in millimeters here. So we'll keep the segment size as 50 because we want to have the flexibility to also set half of a unit, so we can design more precise parts from for the building blocks. So we also are going to change the workspace size, which by default is 700 in millimeters. We are going to update this to 5000 millimeters. So if you think about it, this is actually like 5 meters. So for printing, this doesn't really make any sense. There are for like home usage, there are no such big printers. So you are not going to use 5 meters for your default project. But this project is more of a showcase, so I'm going to change this to this setting just to have more space to work with. You can always scale your project later on if you actually want to print it. So in the beginning, you shouldn't care that much about the units themselves. The orientation is something you will usually change if you come from a different CAD software. Most of the CAD software actually have the Z as the extrusion height in general. So if you import objects that come from this type of orientation, they will actually be rotated when you import them into SelfCAD. but we tested a lot of my mini factory objects, and we actually decided to go with this one because most of the objects there were with this orientation in the beginning. So let's create the project. You can see that compared to the default settings, which is 700 millimeters, you actually get quite a lot of space in the beginning here. And we are going to utilize the entire thing, so this is just a thing to mention. If you start some simple designs, you don't really need that much space, so this doesn't really matter that much at the moment. The first thing that I'm going to cover is 3D Sketch, which is one of the methods to draw in SelfCAD. And I'm going to go to rectangle mode. In rectangle mode, I have something called precision settings, and I'm going to set those to, I will just enable the minimum step size and minimum angle step, just to be able to draw straight lines. And if you take a look closely, you can actually see that those settings will actually allow me to snap to the grid points as well. So what we are going to use as a unit today is this kind of rectangle. It's actually a quad. So those 4 quads will be used as our building block space, and we are going to utilize this quite a lot today. So the first thing we are going to draw is a window with a frame and a ledge below the window itself. So what I'm going to do is just simply use, we still have the rectangle mode on, so this is what we are actually going to use. And I'm simply going to left mouse click to start drawing the rectangle like this. This is my first part. Actually, I want to undo this because I left the first profile. I will actually change this to unit just to get a better idea what I'm dealing with. Naming your objects is a generally good thing to do because it's easier later for you to know what you are working with. So what I'm going to do is deselect the object named unit. This will tell the drawing that I'm actually going to draw a new object from here. So if I draw the rectangle right now, you can see that this will be a second object straight away. I'm going to rename this part as well, so I know which part exactly is responsible for what, and I'm going to deselect it once again. The next thing that I'm going to draw is 2 rectangles like this. So this, if you hide this piece by going on the right side panel to the gear icon and pressing hide. Actually, I didn't meant to I'm sorry, this one. I didn't meant to hide this one. I want to hide the unit object. So this more or less could already work for you as a window, but we want to improve it a little. So I will explain some basic transformations that you can do on this those 2 objects called I will actually rename this to small to glass small. I will explain actually this. Okay, I'm still missing one element here. I will just draw it in a second. So I will call it glass small for now, and I will explain some basic transformations. So we want to improve this a little because this is just way too simple, and we want to make it a little just better looking. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to scale, which is one of the basic transformations that you get in all the CAD software, which is move, rotate, and scale. And I'm going to use the middle gizmo. When you start modeling, most of the things that you will do will be it will be better to use them quite intuitive. So don't care about exact measurements right now because you will learn them over time while using the CAD software itself. So the next thing that I'm going to add here, which I forgot to do earlier, is actually draw a rectangle outside. So after scaling, I have some room for the frame itself, so I can actually do it this way to draw the entire window. I will rename those pieces anyway, because we will going to convert them to actual meshes, first to surfaces, later to meshes, just to have a 3D object, because if you think about it, those are called profiles, which are not really 3D objects straight away. To finalize this, I'm going to go to the selection cube on the right side panel. The selection cube allows you to choose picking modes, selection modes, or however you want to call them. There are, in SelfCAD, there are four, there are actually a few more, but the basic ones are general object selection, which is by default on if you don't change anything on the selection cube. Then you have face selection, polygon selection. Those two are quite similar. I will explain the differences a little later when we start doing some other modeling later on. And you have edge selection and vertex selection. Vertex selection allows you to, if you enable it, you will start to see those small squares, small cubes, which are vertices. Vertices are basically points in 3D geometry, which are responsible for the controlling the positions of all elements in the 3D space. So if you have an edge, the edge is actually described by 2 points, and the position of those points determines how the edge looks in 3D space. The next thing that we have is edge. Edge is basically what I just said, connected by 2 points. If you think about faces and polygons, those are related more to 3D meshes. And the thing that we do in SelfCAD is we have this functionality where if you choose those modes, you can actually select closed paths. So those are closed paths right now. So if I pick one of them, you can actually see that I'm selecting the entire closed path path like this. So what we need to do is select those two edges, and we need to bring them closer to each other. The easiest way to do this is actually using scale. We want to scale this selection in a way that it has generally a smaller area. So if you think about it, the area that those two edges cover are described by the red axis, which is the x-axis in this scenario. It tells you that those are 80 millimeters, which is the current unit we are using. So to bring them closer, I basically need to scale this down to, let's say, 2 units. This way we generated a frame for our window. So this is, as I said, profiles. You can think about them more like 2D, although they can also represent some 3D shapes. So what we need to do is to convert them to actual surfaces or meshes. One of the tools that you can use to do so is fill polygons. So if I select, for example, this frame, I can go to fill polygons, and this will create some triangles, faces, which now represent a shape that actually can be used as a 3D object. Although this still is not really printable, it resembles more something that if you modify it, it actually can be converted to something that you can use for printing as well. So for now, I will fill those elements like this, and I can actually get rid of those two profiles. They won't be used by me for now. I will also delete the unit. I will later on explain once again what I meant by using the quad as a unit space. Oh, I'm sorry, I selected it by accident. Now we are going to explain topology a little, and on the right side panel you have those three icons which represent you the rendering mode, current rendering mode. There is also smooth and backface cooling, but we won't touch those today. Maybe later on in the more advanced part. So mesh is basically what is set by default. This is what you currently see. Wireframe is looks like this. You can see that this actually resembles a little of the profiles we had earlier. If we start converting this to something more 3D, you will actually notice the differences between this and a profile. And the last mode is mesh plus wireframe, which shows pretty much both of those combined, and you already can see some topology structure here. The first thing that we are going to do is we are going to go to the face selection on the right selection cube, and we are going to select those two elements. The tool that we need, now we actually need to split those, because I want to prepare all of the pieces separately so we can assign different textures, materials and colors. So it's easier for me to later on use this to generate the entire project. So what I need to do is to go to the utilities and click on the split icon. This will result in me having three objects in the scene right now. One of the objects is the glasses from the window. The second object is the frame from the window, and the third one is the ledge. The ledge is a little too big, so what I want to do right now is actually scale it down a little. Take a note that I'm actually doing everything with gizmos only. Gizmos are those elements that you can see. Those are transformation gizmos, which you can use to modify your shapes with all of the transformations and the deformations that you can see here. I'm doing everything with gizmos, not really caring about the precision right now, because in the end this will be a part of a bigger model. So whatever I do by hand right now will actually look quite okay in the end. If you want to spend more time on it, of course you can make everything quite precise, and it of course will look much better in the end. But we are going to skip it for now and just do everything so it looks more or less fine right now. So I want to rename the objects so I later on know what exactly is what, and now I'm actually going to use the names I wanted to use. I used Arial also as well, and I will call this element glass small, because we are going to create another window as well with frames and everything, which will be a little bigger than this one. Like this is a double one, and we will just generate a single one as well. This one will be called ledge. I don't need to call it ledge small, because we can just use this one and scale it if I need a bigger one. And this one I will call frame small. So if you think about it, glasses will have glass generally has some thickness in the real world, and although we wouldn't really have to do it right now, because we don't really care about what's behind the glass right now. I mean, we can do it, but if you think about it, transparent things in 3D modeling don't really require thickness, because they are transparent, so you don't really care about their thickness, because you anyway want to see through them. So, but we will just do it for the showcase itself. Okay, I actually just this is like brain memory, like muscle memory. I rotated it. We will do it a little later. So I just undo. I did undo the operation. So the thing that we need to do right now is we want to convert this is a surface, because it actually has no thickness. If you go to scale, you can see that the Y coordinate in scale tells you that this has a dimension, the dimension in the y direction 0. So it doesn't really have any thickness. So the thing that we need to do is actually add thickness here. So there are a few approaches to do. The one that we are going to use right now is add thickness. So I'm going to enable add thickness from modify and change the thickness from the small glasses to 1. There are some settings here which won't really be affected that much by this transformation because this is flat, but you can play around with those to see what the different results you can get. So once I finalize this, this will actually add some thickness to the element. I will hide those for now just to show you what the end result is. So you can actually see that there is some thickness right now. If I would rotate this, let me actually do it. So you can see that in this dimension you already get some offset, and if I go to the scale right now, you can see that the y dimension is 1. Let me unhide those two elements, and we are going to repeat the process for those two elements as well. The frame will be a little wider, I mean I'll have a little more depth, so we are going to set 2, and the same for the ledge, it will be even more thicker, so we are going to set the thickness to 3. So now we have a basic window. We don't want to combine those objects yet because we actually want to use them as one piece later on. So the only thing that I'm going to do is rotate. You can find rotate here on the top header menu, on the top toolbar menu, and you can use either gizmos. We did change some behavior recently. We had this approach where you could set the precision by moving away from the protractor, but now we have a default precision step 5, which you can change from the advanced settings here. Once this is generated, we actually are going to create a one piece window as well, like without the middle part between those two glasses as well. Okay, so we have a question: what's the difference between extrusion and add thickness? All right, so I will keep it in mind. I will explain it in a minute. So we are going to use basically the same tools, and while adding thickness, I will explain the difference between extrusion and adding thickness. So you have to be a little patient. So what we are going to do right now is still use the unit. I could make it bigger straight away, but I want to explain something in a second. So, okay, I actually forgot to deselect it. Another way to create a new profile is to go to the profile settings, and here you can actually press on the plus button. I think yeah. So if you press the plus button, it tells you create new profile, and you can actually notice that the previous one was also deselected. So you can just draw a new profile right away. So the same idea would be to add thickness right now, but I mean, we first need to go once again to tools, fill polygons, and fill the profiles the same way we did before. I can already delete my profiles. If you have a hard time finding your objects, we have a search option here. So if I, for example, put glass, if I want to find all of my glasses from the project, I can actually type here, and this will filter out all the objects from the scene graph and only show me everything that is related to the input. So the difference between add thickness and extrusion, although in some of other software it actually acts the same way. If you do extrusion on surfaces, it acts exactly the same as add thickness. The difference is when you start working on actual 3D models, it will make a difference if you start using extrusion and add thickness. But for this type of shapes, if you do extrusion now, you can actually still get the thickness that you want. But the problem is that if you finalize this, you will notice one thing, that there is actually no face on the bottom of the model. So you would have to go to fill polygons once again and add it manually. But this just requires another step. So if you do the same with add thickness, it just adds the face automatically for you, and you don't really have to think about like using more tools just to create something simple like that. Okay, I actually need to go back because I made a mistake and I forgot to add the frame. So let me just undo this, and we have to repeat the operation. So I need to select this profile, and because this is selected, I'm actually adding right now elements to the existing profile. So I will draw another rectangle here, and I'm going to go to face selection this time and select the entire inner rectangle. And later on to scale, and I want to make the frame basically a thinner frame so it looks better. Now I need to go to edge selection, select those two edges. Oh, I'm sorry, misclicked. And I need to select, okay, can't select this one. Something with my mouse precision. Okay, so once I do it, I once again go to scale, but this time I need to use, I will show a different technique, because in the advanced settings from scale, you have something like symmetry. If you use the gizmo right now, it will only scale in this direction, but we want to do it like symmetrical in both directions. So we will enable symmetry, and we can actually transform it this way just to get the end result faster. And now I'm going to go to fill polygon and basically repeat the same transformations. So select this one, and I can delete the profiles. And the only thing left is using split. So once again, go to face polygon, face selection, and in the utilities you have the tool split. And as before, we end up having 3 models here, so we are going to name them. So this will be glass big. This one will be, I actually created the ledge, but we don't really need this one. We can just reuse the other one, but just for the purpose of showing it, I will just call it ledge big. I won't even bother rescaling this right now. So this one will be frame big. I actually want to rename this to window frame big, because we also are going to have door frames. So let me just rename this also to window frame small. All right, so we have those elements. I can also rotate this one just to position it better. And here we have it. So those are 2 types of windows that we are going to use for our modeling. I will just add the thickness for those, so we can reuse this later on. One for the window glass, I will select the frame, add thickness 2 for the window frame, and add thickness 3 for the ledge. All right, so those are already 3D objects, so we can also treat them this way. I see that I rotated this a little too less. Let me fix that. All right. Okay, so those will be building parts for us. And what we want to do is we want to make them look better. So this is a new thing we are going to cover. We did not cover it on the previous webinars. We are going to use some textures. So the first thing that we are going to do is select the window frame, the small one, and go to the material section over here. And in the texture section, you get a few things to work with. So first of all, you get load, image, and remove. Remove is used when you already load something, so won't matter that much. And in the first design that I did, I was actually using some custom textures. Today we are only going to use a custom image for the image to 3D operation later on, because I found a different method and to achieve the glass reflectiveness. So I will just show a slightly different method that the one from the example. And we are going to use wood texture and basically just play around with the settings. In the UV settings, you have something nice, which is box projection. This allows the texture to be aligned much better. And if you press reset values, it just aligns it a little better. So you can now see that we actually get some wood texture over here, and the frame starts looking much better. So I will just finalize this. And for the glass, we are only going to change the opacity. On the right side panel next to the material, you actually get a setting called opacity. So what we want from the glass for now is just to be able to see through it. And this is what we are going to keep for now. The ledge will, it needs to have a grayish color, just so it looks like some better material or something like that. So the thing that I like to use here is actually using metal texture for this, because this will allow us to get some shininess, and even if the ledge itself shouldn't really be metallic, I am actually mostly using this metal 2 material just to make it look much nicer for the end result. And I won't care about this element right now. I'm actually going to delete it. For the glass, I'm doing the same, opacity 50. And for the frame, I'm also going to use the wood texture like this, in the same way. So the same texture, also going to use box projection and just reset values so it updates. But I think this one already is, I think, more or less fine. So here we have it. So those are two elements that we are going to use all over the project. Now we need something we put those actually on. So we need some building blocks for the actual buildings. And the tool that we are going to use for it is called Image to 3D. And now I'm going to present some method from Image to 3D, which I find quite nice, quite simple to start generating buildings. So one of the ways would be just take a simple cube and cover it in some brick texture. But this has some flaws. If you start connecting things, the texture might get offset and so on. And it's not always the best approach to use. And also texture doesn't really apply for 3D printing. So in the end result, you would actually lose those details. So the thing that I use here is I'm loading a brick image, brick texture to the image to 3D object. And as you can see, this will generate me something like this. I want to increase the resolution a little, just to not make it like completely pixelated. And I'm just going to finalize this with those settings. I actually need to show something because I already changed the default settings. So just to explain this. The default, I think, is 2 or 3 if you enter the software. So if you take a look at the result, the bricks are actually reversed. So everything that was supposed to come out is actually inside. The reason for that is that image to 3D works on colors, and everything that is dark is, in this case, okay, I'm sorry, this is actually the default setting. So yeah, so okay, so I actually lost myself in this because I changed both of the default settings at once. So because I had the flipped background, it actually flipped the texture. But if you have, so let me just explain to the end. So everything that is dark on the image will be offset more than the colors that are light. So if you have something reversed, let's say you would have like white bricks and the space between the bricks would be dark, you would have to use flick background because you would like to offset the result. And another way to offset it is actually using the amount with a negative value. So those, they have a slightly different result, but you can actually use those combined with each other, or just using one of them to solve the problems. I'm going to use amount 3 and go back to resolution. Let's say I will actually put it 180, and yeah, we can actually finalize. So the next thing that I want to do is only keep the front polygon. But if I do it this way, you need to take a look at it this way. If I select the entire polygon, okay, this has actually a big offset, so I will have to increase the tolerance. If you need to select surfaces that are not really equally coplanar, you can use the tolerance factor here. This will allow you to select more surfaces, surfaces that have slight differences in have like details and things like that. This is very useful for selecting those surfaces. So if you look closely, you can see that this is not really a straight polygon right now, because we already offset, and the offset also applied to the edges of the polygon itself. So to fix this, I'm going to use cube selection, and the way I'm going to use it, cube selection you can find on the right side panel under the label selection tools next to Marquee selection and inverse selection. Inverse selection we are going to use in a second as well. So I'm entering cube selection. Cube selection gives you a set of gizmos as well as a set of sliders to set the cube with which you want to cut the current selection. So the way I'm going to select is I'm going just to make a slight offset on the Z value here, just to select it this way. And I need to increase it a little because this might not really cover exactly, so I will just increase it a little. The reason for that is quite simple. If we would connect this later on, there might be actually holes, which I will also explain in a minute. So now we want to keep what I currently selected, to not have to copy it then delete the original part. I'm going to use inverse selection, and I'm just going to simply go to delete and delete the current selection. This will leave me with only the front part of the image to 3D. And okay, let me not rename it for now yet. The next thing we are going to do is we need to simplify it. The reason why I want to simplify it, because if you take a look at those numbers here, so both for face or polygons, this is quite high, and this is 24,000 faces right now. And if we start copying this around, you will end up having really a lot of details, and it will be just too heavy. So to simplify it, in Modify, you can actually use Simplify Object, a tool to basically convert your object to something more low polygon based. And you can see the numbers here. So the tool updates the numbers straight away, and we need to go down a little. And I'm going to make it actually not really much detailed, and the reason for that is I don't really care about having a lot of details, because this will be just a small part of the entire project, so it won't be really that visible anyway. So I will just finalize it this way. This has almost 5,000 faces, which is still quite a lot, but it won't make a problem for us. Now I need to scale it. I want to make this into our unit size, which is two grid squares. And 2 grid squares based on the initial segment settings is 100 millimeters, because one segment has 50 millimeters. So what I'm going to do is, in advanced settings, I need to enable the keep proportion switcher and change the size. The size that I'm changing always is the smaller one, just to not deform it too much. I mean the smaller one from X and Y, because Z is just the depth right now, which we don't really want to touch, so we don't lose the details we previously created. So I'm going to scale it down to 50. And I'm actually, okay, I actually would, let's, I'm just thinking if it wouldn't be better if we make it 100 right now. I think it will be better if we make it actually 100. Alright, so just a small improvement as we think about it, because I think this will make much more sense later on. Okay, so now we need to turn off the keep proportion, and I want to make the X the same size as the Y, which is also 100. And you can see we didn't really lose the details that we had previously, and we can use this as our building block. Double click on move, actually it centers the object in the middle of the scene, so that's what I want to do right now. And now I want to convert this to a cube. Not really a cube, because we just need the side walls. So I'm going to use offset this to 50 on the Z axis, and I'm going to use a tool called copy offset. Let me actually hide those elements for now. The green selection is called area selection. It's usually on the right button from the mouse, but you can also use marquee selection. It basically selects everything that is in the area of the selection, as the name suggests. So I'm going to hide those elements from the right side panel. Okay, I'm going to select those as well. And we are going to work with this element only. The thing that I'm going to use is copy offset. So in the tools, you have something called copy offsets. This tool allows you to generate multiple copies at once by applying some transformations. This tool has a lot of use cases, although it's not really that easy to use. I think the easiest one to use is actually the pivot. Pivot allows you to rotate around a point the current selection. So what we are going to do is we are going to create 3 copies just straight away. The reason why I added the offset here, the 50 units, is to make the 0,0 point a pivot point. So if I copy this, you will actually see that this generated a closed shape. I mean, not really closed, but 4 walls, which we will make it closed later on, but we don't want to add the top and the bottom, because those will be covered anyway by different pieces. So we have those 4 walls right now, but we want to make them into one object, one mesh. There are several methods to do so, but the one that we are going to use for now is actually merge objects, because we don't really care about keeping those objects related later on. Okay, so the reason why I did not only take the front part of the objects is that if we did just use it straight away without using cube selection, here we would actually end up having holes, because some of the elements are actually offset in opposite direction. So this is offset in kind of this direction, and this is offset in this direction. So this would generate a hole here. So by using cube selection, we fixed that and just covered the the differences. So yeah, here we have it. So this is our first building block, and I will actually call it block. And this is what we are going to use together with the windows, and we will start to generate some buildings. The thing that I want to change is the color as well. We don't really need to change the material on this. This already has some reflectiveness, like shininess, from the lighting from the scene. So we don't really care about the texture because this already looks quite nice. And let me unhide some of the elements. And yeah, so we need a couple of things still. But first I will explain what we are going to do in the end. Let me position this on -50 and 100. So this is our building block, and the way we are going to populate the entire scene is by simply copying it. And we can either use Control drag on the shape. So if I just deselect it and Control drag, I can just simply drag, and this will create a copy. I can align it. The problem with that is that you will see that there are some spaces between the blocks. The reason for that is that it's because we also have the offset from the details. So if you go to scale, you will notice that it's not really 100 times 100 of a cube. It already has some offset on those two dimensions. So to combine those elements, we always will have to fix the 1.2 offset and round it down to 50. This way, we actually generate something that is merged together. You will still see some imperfection here, but this is also something you can fix. So let me just show you quickly a different method. To fix this, you can use another way to generate a copy is using mirror. If you enable the create copy settings in mirror, you can actually just create a copy as this name suggests. So if I do it this way, I still need to fix the offset, of course. But if I fix it, then you will notice that there is not really that much imperfection going on here right now. The reason for that is that everything that was offset on the original cube will also be offset the same way on the mirror, which you wouldn't achieve with a simple copy, even if you would start like rotating and things like that. This is the best way to work also with like repeating textures. It's just a standard method of covering repeated patterns like this. And I would have to do the same for the top, but we sadly won't have time to do all of this, so I will just remove it and we will use it later on, just simple. So my project won't be that perfect, but you can fix it for yourself later on. The last thing, there are actually two elements we would still have to do, maybe three, but I will just show one of them, which is the fountain. And you saw on the original example that we had a fountain, some trees, and also a car that was, I will show the end result from that, just to see where you can go with it, because I don't want to waste time, because I want to also show you how you can use your environment map to make some nice glass reflectiveness. So I will just show the general idea how to generate those. Trees is something you can see on the previous webinars as well, but I want to show the fountain because this is actually quite nice, and I think it's worth showing. So to generate a fountain, we are going to combine 3D sketch and we are going to combine revolve. So think about it like you could use a reference image, but I mean, there is a lot of like front views for different objects, so you for sure can find something on the web. but I will just show you a general method how to think about like drawing profiles. So everything that is meant to have a like revolve shape will always have a profile, which will be used for the revolving part. So you need to think about like taking the object and seeing it only in 2D. And if you cut it in half, this is your profile. So I can, for example, draw some chess figures really quick because of the simple fact that they are symmetrical in a lot of ways. The point is not snapping here because we have the minimum step size and minimum angle step. So you need to enable the override step size to snap to elements. So if I do it, let's say this way, and okay, so this way, but I will have to move that point because it already was offset. So by using move, I can fix it just by typing here 500. And if you go to revolve right now, which is in the tools, and press revolve around edge, and here you have two options: choose an edge, but we didn't draw one, so I actually need to choose draw an edge, and I need to connect those 2 points to revolve. So if I would finalize this, you would actually see that we have like a rook from the chessboard. This is done in a couple of seconds, and this is what you need to, how you need to think about using revolve. So this way we are going to also create the fountain. So if you think about it, the fountain is not really that different from a profile. It just has a different structure of the elements, and this is what we are going to try to reproduce. I hope I can make it because I actually didn't do it for quite some time. So what we need to do is we need like a pool for the water, and then we need to have some offset, and now we would like to use some arcs because a fountain is built from arcs. So this is the first element. You can choose the offset whatever you want. What I'm using here is a 2-point arc. You could draw the same with all of those, but I think it's easier with the 2-point arc. So you just take the beginning and just make an offset and move the arc with the bulge factor in this direction. Now I need to add some thickness to the first part of it, and basically just repeat the arc, the 2-point arc on the second level. So I also need to add the same like offset here, but if I do it this way, then it might not be exactly perfect, but I think we can use it this way. It won't be perfect, but I need to like wrap things up. So I will just call this fine. So the next thing we need to do is go up once again and just finish it somehow. So we are going to draw another arc, just a smaller one, and let me put like a 5 bulge factor here, and the same process, just offset it a little. I need to change the precision to 5 because I'm getting just too small of an offset, and I will just draw it this way just to make it faster. Close it up like this, and the way I'm usually thinking about this is that I want to use the world axis, which is in this case, for example, this line, as something that I will revolve around. So everything will be intact, everything will be symmetrical, and I won't have to worry about making everything completely precise here. So this way I can just draw once again between those points, and I know that nothing will be offset this way. So going to revolve around edge, draw, and basically connect those 2 points. It's not really the most beautiful one, but I think we can call it fine enough for this presentation. So we can delete our profile right now, and let's just add some color, so it's like a grayish fountain. We need to, of course, scale it. You can use any scale. You can think about it like how many building blocks you want to cover with it. I will put 150 to it, just to make it 1.5 of a unit, if this makes any sense right now. Okay, so we on the example we also had some like water, more or less something that resembles water. So what I just did is I just took some circles. You can use 3D Sketch or freehand. Actually, it makes much more sense to use freehand right away. Freehand will already convert to a 3D shape when I finalize. So you just need to generate a circle and then align it and scale. So we're just going to do this, and the setting that I want to change is height, and put like 2. It doesn't have to be anything big. So you can also use opacity just to make it nicer, let's say something like this, and you just need to position it. So I always use double click to center the shape and just align it and scale it so it fits the bottom part. The next part I will use control drag on a gizmo, which forces the transformation of the copy to stay in the same direction as the gizmo. So I wouldn't change the direction. So the only thing that I need to do right now is just to scale it down. And the last part, the same idea, go to move. I guess, okay, so just to make it look somewhat all right. And the same idea for that. I want to rename this just to wrap everything. I just want to show the general idea how to generate the objects, because we still have a few things to cover. So I will just leave the fountain somewhere here. All right, so the idea of creating entire projects out of building blocks is by simply copying them around, as I mentioned before. And I mostly use copy offset for that, and this is where I'm also going to use what I'm also going to use right now. So the idea of the unit is that I know that everything can be in a distance of 100 right now. So if I start to copy around, I can actually use 100 as my repeat factor. So if I create 2 copies this way, I actually get an element built out of 3 building blocks. And I can do the same for the height. So if I put 100 on this axis, you will actually see that I generated a 3 by 3 building block. So I'm just going to move it to the back a little. We can actually, oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to put the minus. And the only thing we need to do is just to position the elements. So if I select the frame, I just need to position it in the center. So in this case, it will actually be 0. And this way you can see, I mean, okay, so the opacity is not really the best idea here, because you would just see the bricks. So I will just show later on how to solve this. Okay, so where is my other part? Okay, it's not okay, it's actually inside of it. So let me just take my elements by putting in the right names here. I just need to take them out, and my ledge as well. All right, so Okay, so here we have it, and I'm going to position them just next to it. I will just show the general idea how to do it, because later on I will just switch to the other project and show the end result of it as well. All right, so we are going to move it to position 100. The height is, I mean, you can set it whatever you want to, depends how the window is generated. So you just need to keep in mind to set the related elements to the same position. So once again, the opacity is not the best idea. All right, so okay, I think I have a different position here. It's also 40. I'm not sure why this doesn't really match. Yeah, okay, my bad, because this also has the thickness from the frame. Right, so the ledges would be the last thing to do. Let's say 10. Okay, this makes sense, and I will copy it and just put it here. Actually, I want to move this to the second part. 150 on the X. 200. I'm sorry, I used a different unit on the example, and I want to show that you can customize your elements as well by just simply, for example, scaling them. If you want different elements, you can just take one of them and just scale them. So I don't really have to be any precise here. I can just figure out something by hand. All right, so the last piece that I was using also in the main example was in the prototype was like a railing for a balcony. So I just want to show what tool you can use to generate this. So first of all, we are going to go to 3D Sketch, and we are going to draw something with the relation to the window here. So what I'm going to do is I'm using half of a new unit in this case, so just one segment, and I'm going to use like three squares to generate something like this. We want to start with like the how to call it, the vertical railing part, and for that we are going to actually use a cylinder. And let me just hide all objects just to explain. I have some change settings, so I will just press default values here on the left side panel to reset them to what we usually start with, and I want to change the radius on both of those to 2. And the reason why I'm keeping it that big is because I want to make the radiuses a little more by just simply scaling the entire thing down. So I'm just going to finalize, and I'm going to scale it down until it somewhat resembles what we want to do. I guess this would be the default height of a railing of a balcony, so this is what I'm going to use. The tool that we are going to use to complete the railing is follow path. Follow path is a tool which you can find here, and it takes 2 objects as an input. One of the objects is the source, how to call it, like the input, and the second one is the path that you will use the subject for the copying part. So if I use it this way and go to follow path and press preview, you will see that it starts copying around. The reason why it looks at the first it looks like it's not really on the path is because it's a little below the grid, and this will get fixed by itself by our software, because we keep everything on the workspace. So I could draw the railing, I guess, a little higher just to make the effect straight away correct, but you can see that it created copies around the railing. So the only thing we need to do is just to get a number that makes it more or less correct. I think 60 should be a right amount. So we'll have like four elements here. So the only thing that I need to do is finalize. I will deselect the original one and use merge objects just to make those one single object. And the next thing that I'm going to use is I'm not really going to delete the path that I used here. I'm going to move it up, and I can either move it up straight away to the top or the middle. It wouldn't matter. I just need to choose one of those. So what I want to use this for is to create the top, and I will also make a middle segment here. To achieve this, one of the ways to generate things like that is using follow path by having two profiles as an input. The way this works is I can generate a circle. Let's say I make a circle of radius 2. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, let me actually just scale this down. It will be faster. So I will just scale it down to 2 by 2, which will give me more or less, okay, actually to make it precise, I would have to check. I think it will be the same. You could be more precise and just check the dimension of those pillars by selecting them, but let's just move on for now. So the way I'm using the tool is I'm selecting this profile first, which will be the reference for the path to know what to do with the shape. So I'm using this as the input, as the subject of the transformation, and I'm selecting the path once again. And this way, if I go to follow path and press preview, this acts a little different for objects and for profiles. Now you can see that it took actually the profile and it created an extrusion-like shape along the path itself. So I'm just going to finalize this. I want to move it a little down so the railings go out a little, and I'm going to create a copy in the middle of the railing as well. And this way we basically created something like that. I just need to delete the profile, and I will combine everything together. By using merge objects. The last thing we need to do is we need to have some material for this. So once again to the material section, and we are going to use my favorite metal one, but this time I'm going to change the color to something darker. This might be okay. I will just use the picker and make it like this. Okay, so this is more or less what we want to achieve. The last thing that I'm going to show, which as I mentioned wasn't really on the main idea of the webinar, is environment maps. And if you go to the settings and to the environment, although this is still marked beta, we have those environment maps here, which if you enable, they create like a skybox, which is nothing less as a cube with textures around the scene. And one of the environment maps that we have here is Hansaplatz, which is somewhat resembling of what we exactly want to do in the project. And I will keep it for us just for a minute because I want to show what you can do with it. If you now go to the select your objects and go to the material section, in the material you actually have something called environment map. And if you enable this, it will actually start reflecting the environment map in your objects. So if I finalize this, and if I want to get rid of the environment map right now, I'm actually able to do so. So I can still hide the environment map, and you will see that I'm actually getting a reflection of everything that was there. And in this case, it actually looks pretty nice because this is what we more or less wanted to have as our city view. So this is just one way to achieve a better reflection for the glasses. I'm assuming that a different color would also make okay, not this kind of color, but something more lighter would also resemble more of a actual lighting reflection from the glasses itself. Okay, we have a question how the follow path works exactly. Right, so the idea for follow path is that you can either use it for objects or you can use it for profiles, as I showed. If you, for example, use a profile like this and you would like to, I will use even a simple cube as an example. I'm sorry. Okay, let me just, sorry for that. I will just go to default values and use a cube. I will make it smaller just to show the idea. Okay, so the idea for follow path is that if you have something like this and you select the cube and the profile, it gives you an option to start creating copies around the path itself. So if I go to follow path right now, I have a couple of options. I can start creating multiple copies, like let's say I want to populate this quite a lot. I can start using things like that. I can also change the settings like taper, for example, just to make a different result. The idea basically is that the path is interpolated by the algorithm itself, and based on the settings, there are generated points on the path itself, and those points are also combined with something we call a tangent. If you take a path, on each point of the path there is a tangent, which is a direction from the path outside from the path itself, and this is what is used as a direction to position every element that is copied like this. I hope this explains it more or less. Okay, so I think that covers the basics of the modeling examples. So I think I'm going to just switch to my main project and just to wrap things up. This might take a moment because there is quite a lot of elements. I used some more detailed elements, so which are not really better than what we did right now. But yes, there's quite a lot of details, so it might take a minute to load it. I think the only thing that to cover right now that we have is animations. I will just make a example and show what I did for the main thing, just to wrap up, and that will be all for today. I sadly won't have time to cover the lighting part, but I think the environment map is quite a big improvement to the designing as well. So animations are recorded while you do transformations. So transformations like move, scale, or even the deformations are recorded. Right now we also have animations for sculpting. But the idea more or less is that if you go to animations and press the record animation, you can start moving things around and this will be recorded. So if I move this cube, for example, here, this will already get recorded. So if I view the animation by stopping the recording and going to view, you will see that my cube will start moving the same way I just did the transformation by interpolating the positions all over the like path that was used by the transformation. So the same way I previously created animations for those two cars that are added here. Okay, the second one is parked here. So if I play the animations like this, you will actually see that they are moving quite nicely here. I had some lightings here added as well, but sadly I won't be able to cover it in this version. All right, I think that will cover everything for this webinar. We will have our next webinar shortly, I think. And the next one will be presented by Aaron Brewer, the CEO of SelfCAD itself. So I think it will be quite interesting to watch. I hope you enjoyed. Thank you for watching and take care. Bye.